Contemplations of the Infant Jesus by Olivier Messiaen. Before I dig into the piece, I'd like to talk of Messiaen's biography. And then we'll see how Messiaen expressed his Catholic faith in this piece by analyzing the commentaries, themes, and the concepts related to the church. That would be the first topic, love of God. Second, the survey of influence on Messiaen includes his fascination not only by Catholic faith, but also by 20th century composers such as Bela Bartok and Igor Stravinsky, who planted exotic elements in the music. Along with the impact of those composers, Messiaen also analyzed Hindu rhythms and wrote the compositional application on his book, The Technique of the Musical Language. That would be the second topic, love of exoticism. Lastly, I'm going to cover Messiaen's love of bird songs and the impact on his creative bird song phrases, which is the last topic, love of nature. Let me briefly show Messiaen's biography to understand the position of this work among his masterpieces. Messiaen was a French composer who embraced many traits of the 20th century and explored his musical ideas through the identity of a devout Catholic. He emerged as the most important composer of French keyboard music of mid-20th century. Educated at the Paris Conservatory, Messiaen went on to build a career in Paris that included holding the post of principal organist at La Trinité for more than 60 years, and teaching at the École Normale de Musique and the School of Canton for 40 years. His career was interrupted by service in the French army during World War II, during which he was captured by Germans and interned in a prison camp. From 1943, Messiaen was on the faculty at the Paris Conservatory, where he was appointed professor of harmony class. Among his students were Yvonne Laureate, who became his second wife, Pierre Blaise, George Benjamin, and Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. Messiaen was thus an extremely powerful influence on many of the most significant composers of the period, because his teaching and analysis was different from the traditional teaching style of composition. He used examples of Armand Baer, Stravinsky, Ravel, who were contemporary composers at the time, and this was contrary to the conservative teaching of the other music schools. Messiaen wrote a theoretical treatise, Technique of My Musical Language, in 1944, in which he documented technical elements of his style up to the time. He described himself as both a musician and rhythmist, a way of pointing to his extensive study of Greek and medieval rhythmic patterns, as well as the rhythm system that governed Hindu music. He was particularly fascinated with complex concepts such as overlapping, asymmetrical, non-retrogradable rhythms, and grouping in odd numbers. Harmonically, Messiaen moved from sonorities that are reminiscent of Debussy through traditional modality, creating scales of his own devising, such as his modes of limited transposition and serialism. His harmony writing is always rich in color, and although often dissonant and complex, it retains elements of sonority that are appealing to the non-analytic listener. 20 Contemplations of the Infant Jesus, composed in 1944 and was the apex of Olivier Messiaen's middle period work for piano and requires over 2 hours to perform across 20 movements. The dedicatee was Yvonne Laureate, who was the student and second wife of Messiaen. She premiered this piece, and her brilliant piano technique enabled Messiaen to compose virtuosic works like this piece. Messiaen often composed with biblical stories such as the birth, transformation, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. 20 Contemplations of the Infant Jesus consists of 20 movements with subtitles related to Christianity, encompassing the story of Jesus Christ's birth. Also, subtitles are based on the concept of Catholic faith. God, Jesus, the only Son of God, the Holy Spirit is in unity. This is called Trinity. These three-in-one concept captured Messiaen, and he expresses this mystery in his work. Today, I'm going to play number 1, 10, 11, and 20. Also, each movement has its own descriptive focus that Messiaen comments on in written notes at the beginning of the work. The composer creates a work unified by thematic symbolism of such concepts as the cross, the star, and God the Father. Various themes related to religious concepts are pervasive across the movements. This, from religious concepts and their transformation, manifests influences of Catholic liturgy on Messiaen. He used theme of the star and the cross in number 2 and 7, and theme of chords in 14, 20, and the theme of God in number 1, 5, 6, 15, and 20. Let me briefly demonstrate what it sounds like. Theme of God is and the theme of the stars and the cross theme of chords. And let me begin with the theme of the star and the cross. This represents Jesus Christ's crucifixion and the intervals of the cross. Let's listen to number 2. And this theme is transformed in number 7. Now, theme of chords has less religious meaning, and it appears to represent the variety of sounds and ideas in this piece. Let's listen to number 14 and number 20, and you can listen theme of chords. That was number 14, and let's listen to number 20. The themes are transformed according to the subject of each movement, and the theme of God is one of the most representative themes. Theme of God has solemn, unrelenting God's character. The theme has threefold. One is slow, divine, static character in number 1, 5, 11, and 15. Let's listen to number 1 first. And this is number 5. Now let's listen to number 11. Now this theme is transformed into slow but slightly different form. to the glorious, majestic theme in number 6 and number 20. Let's listen to number 6 first. And this appears in number 20. Sometimes it appears as a dance-like and joyful one in number 10 and 20. Let's listen to number 10. And it's my mistake. It appears in number 11. These recurring motive ideas are associated with Richard Wagner's leitmotif technique. Messiaen was impressed by Wagner's methods, praising Wagner as a pioneer of new musical expression. Messiaen mentioned the leitmotif as an extraordinary medium of speech and expression, and he directly confirmed that he owed a great deal to this idea. Through this technique, Messiaen succeeded to deliver the image of God constantly and also give coherency and expressing power by creative, variant themes. Also, Messiaen related the concept of time to the eternal presence of God, where there is no beginning and end. For him, this is another mystery of God presented in number 1, which enabled Messiaen to compose such an extremely slower tempo. And in the number 10, Messiaen uses the theme of God, theme of mystical love, and theme of joy for expressions of great joy in God. One of the religious elements in this movement is shown through the theme similarity to plain chant. The opening section of this movement, as well as its later reprise, is practically a note-for-note transcription of the gradual high diez used sung during Easter Mass, and the text comments on exalting and praising the Lord for his endless goodness and mercy. Let's listen to number 10 first, and then let's compare this to Easter Gradual. Messiaen revealed his admiration for plain chant. In particular, Messiaen asserted that only plain song possesses all at once the purity, the joy, and the lightness necessary for the soul's flight toward truth. For him, the tempo of plain song is as important as how melodies are applied in plain song. According to Messiaen, the delicacy of plain song may only manifest in quickness and joy if it is sung with appropriate liveliness and rapidity. The theme of spirit of joy is expressed by the origin of the text and specific tempo. Lastly, another religious element is harmonic use in the theme of joy. Messiaen was organist at the Cathedral La Trinité for 60 years, and his visualization of sound with color was affected by the stained glasses there. He He mentioned musical experiences from the age of 10 when he had seen for the first time the stained glass windows of Saint Chapelle. Since then, whenever he heard music, he could see colors. The synesthetic discussion goes deeper, comparing complementary colors with complex resonances of overtone. One can hear the bell sound of great cathedrals, and there's more than one frequency, producing countless additional overtones. Therefore, for Messiaen, the complex harmonies were influenced visually by stained glass and acoustically by church bells. In Contemplation of Joyful Spirit number 10, the theme of joy consists of a bell sound harmony which represents dazzling colors in the cathedrals. Let's listen to that clip. Let's move on to the love of exoticism. Messiaen's music is, however, somewhat far from the divine atmosphere to his contemporary audiences. People used to connect divine and glorious concept with serene, simple, majestic, or sometimes purifying image of sound. However, Messiaen planted religious elements into the experimental context such as exotic and foreign harmony and rhythm. This is because Messiaen's compositional style encompasses the important traits of 20th century music, as well as Hindu, Greek, and Eastern European rhythms and timbre. These exotic elements are embedded in the works of other 20th century composers, particularly that of Bartók and Igor Stravinsky. In fact, Messiaen admired Bartók's work and adopted some of his compositional ideas related to melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic devices. They also shared other traits: a love of nature, an admiration for Wagner's music, and an openness to Indian and Oriental influences. Theme of Oriental dance and plain chant is one of the explicit sources mentioned when explaining Bartók's impact on Messiaen. Out of 20 movements, this theme appears only in number 10, and the sound effect is reinforced by the same melody in the lower register with a fast tempo. The theme is from a plain chant Hack diez, which we listened to right before, and the texture has similarities with Bartók's dance pieces. Let's compare. And this is Bartók. And rhythmic similarity, as well as textural one, is noticeable. Messiaen uses the Bulgarian rhythm 1-2-1-2, 1-2-3. This is Bartók's Bulgarian dance number 2. And you can see in the example number 10, 1/8 note and 2/16 note and 3/16 notes. So if you calculate with 16 notes, so 2/16, 2/16, and 3/16. The octonic scale as the designation for the scale or pitch class collection generated by alternating whole tones and semitones is another representative influence of Stravinsky on Messiaen. Stravinsky often used systemized scales, and Messiaen also used the same compositional process by composing with several modes, among which mode 2, in particular, consists of the octonic scale. Although scale-wise analysis can be too general, it was Messiaen who was the first, at least in print, to associate Stravinsky mode 2 first.
Whole step, and the sound of the scale is.
And in 10 contemplations of the infant Jesus, especially number 10, there is octavic scale. Let me briefly show. Now, added value. This is related to the Hindu rhythms. For Messiaen, the notion of time was different from the former Western composers. He regards rhythm as arising from an extension of durations known as added value, so-called additive rhythm in time, rather than from a division of time. Let me explain from the Messiaen's piece first. You can see the added value in number 11, irregularly and constantly added rhythms. So for example, first bar is 1 plus 2, and the second bar is 2 plus 4, and then suddenly 3 plus 5. So it's out of expectation. And then the second example, the 16th note on the left hand, 14, and then goes 13, and then suddenly it's 15. This is the examples of added value, and you can compare with Haydn Sonata in C major third movement. You see, one bar is divided into 3 quarter notes, and then 3 quarter notes divided into 16 6 8 notes. So it's really calculated, really different from what Messiaen thought about. Yeah, and according to the Messiaen's book, Technique of Musical Language, the idea of added value comes from a metrical rhythm, which greatly differentiates Messiaen from the former Western composers who used the notion of a division of time. I just mentioned the ametrical rhythm, and the idea of an ametrical rhythm was influenced by Hindu rhythm. Messiaen discovered the table of 120 Indian decimales from Messiaen's history and organ teacher, Maurice Emmanuel and Marcel Dupré. The table of 120 Indian decimales is rhythms of the Indian provinces. He gave an example of this Hindu rhythm system. Rabindravardhana is introduced in his book, The Technique of My Musical Language. In this book, Messiaen speaks of the charm of impossibilities in music, rhythmic patterns which cannot be reversed because they are the same both forwards and backwards. This is called non-retrogradable rhythms, and they are found only in very simple cases in the table of Indian rhythm, for example, number 51. From there, Messiaen found and developed non-retrogradable rhythms, whether one reads them from right to left or from left to right, the order of their values remains the same. In the middle part of number 11, non-retrogradable rhythm expresses a dance in faster tempo. This rhythm already appeared in the dance-like passages of number 10 and 11, and this is the first theme of number 20. The rhythm is, and if you see the left hand, constantly Messiaen uses this rhythm. And in number 20, he uses this rhythm as the first theme. Messiaen associated the non-retrogradable rhythm with the attribute of God's unchangeability. Also for Messiaen, it represents that God is the beginning and the end. Messiaen saw rhythm as a circle without the flow of time. His musical concept relates to the notion of his religion. Saint Francis in the 13th century, long time ago, had a great impact on Messiaen, and it's obvious that the notion of nature as an embodiment of God's character influenced Messiaen definitely. He regarded birds as a creature to praise God and pure musical source, not manipulated by artificial elements. It was not until 1951 that he settled down to transcribe bird songs. However, he had imitated bird song in a generalized way. The songs of birds represent the awe Messiaen felt because birds are being like angels or resurrected souls, free in flight and at one with God. Number 11, the Virgin's First Communion describes the time when the Virgin Mary was informed that she would be the mother of Jesus Christ by the Holy Spirit. This is based on a painting showing the Virgin Mary kneeling in contemplation, worshiping the child in her womb. In calm and slow tempo, over persistent theme of God, bird song takes part in this mysterious atmosphere. Let's listen to number 11. From here, number 20. And number 5 is the most devoted movement to the bird song-like phrases. Let's listen to number 5. By the way, the word in French in red box, it's can be translated like the song of bird. He says, nature has retained the purity and exuberance and freshness we lost. I turn to bird songs because they are the most musical, the closest to us, and the easiest to reproduce. Before I finish the lecture part, I'd like to end with conclusion. Messiaen's compositional tools include creative uses of Hindu irregular rhythms and octonic scale from 20th century musical ideas, including exoticism. He used exotic elements, but his philosophical background was always Christian religion. His comprehensive and meditative attitude as an organist for 60 years would affect his compositional process. Messiaen often matched the attributes of these exotic materials to his religious doctrine. For example, non-retrogradable rhythm that derived from irregular Hindu rhythms was not only useful tools, but also related to God's unchanging and eternal characteristics. Honestly, I thought I could have understood Messiaen's music because I'm a Christian who shares fundamental doctrine with him. However, I realized that his color of Christianity is quite different from what I expected. I put emphasis on God's nearness who resides in me. I pursue a very intimate relationship with him. For me, Messiaen perceived God as a being in distance. He meditated and appreciated God's attributes more in a sense of humanity. Now we can see the fact that a performer shares the same religious doctrine with a composer doesn't guarantee better understanding or performance because the way of perceiving God is not in accord with the composer. Messiaen's notion of God is somewhat abstractive and ideological for me. In addition, Messiaen never doubted his faith and always praised God and the joy in him, which Messiaen loved to use. These facts comes to his unique style, which is different from 20th century composers who concentrate on the bitterness of humanity. He said that he was born a believer, and the scriptures have always made a deep impression on him. For a while, I couldn't agree with Messiaen's faith because I had doubts about the mystery, ambiguity, and vastness of God in the Bible and struggled to understand and to believe deeply. Now, the way Messiaen expresses his religion through his music helps me to play music in a way he approached. Like he appreciated and believed in God's characteristics, I'd like to do so rather than try to understand the invisible God. I hope that his biblical view of what God is like would have an impact on my life so that I could meditate on God in different ways through his music. Through meditating religious metaphors and symbols in his use of music, the audience could come to realize Messiaen's fascination with God. Thank you. Thank you.